Cities are extremely important urban centers where large numbers of people are concentrated. In the US, around 80% of the population lives in cities, and this percentage is only growing. They serve as economic hearts, becoming diverse centers for trade between individuals, whether that be the trade of goods, services, or thoughts and ideas. They play a major role in shaping everyone into who they are. Now, every single person has had experiences with cities. You likely know what a city is and have already had your own thoughts and ideas about how they should be run, their aesthetic, and their overall feeling. But I'm here to tell you that cities are more than that. There are so many different rules and elements that come together to shape a city into what it is today. When you start thinking about urban design, it turns cities into something very different. So today I wanted to go over the idea of what urban design is and talk about the 5 elements that come together to create a city and how important this is to your perception of urban environments. Before we get into that though, please consider subscribing to the channel. We make geography content like this every week, so if you enjoy learning about roads, cities, and geography, please click the subscribe button so you don't miss any future uploads. Thank you! So looking at urban design changes what a city is. This is an approach that looks at the buildings and spaces in a more specific way, thinking about why something is where it is and how it affects the environment around it. A good example to use would be roads, which play a massive role in urban design. Why was the road built where it is, and how does it interact with the urban space around it? What feeling does it create? Does its width and straightness make the driver feel safer driving at a higher speed? And does the foliage around it give it a natural, integrated feel, or does it stand out? There's so many different ways to look and think about it, and they only get more specific. One major figure in urban design was Kevin Lynch, a 20th century city planner and author of the book The Image of a City, which was published in 1960. This book talked about the 5 elements of urban design. In other words, the qualities that contribute to a set of mental images that exist in the minds of the people who experience a city. These 5 elements work together in every city, and though they can be experienced and interpreted differently, they're seen in every single urban area. So let's get into what these 5 elements are, talk about their details, what creates them, and what they do for a city. The first element of a city would be the paths. These are the ways people get around cities, being ways of movement and travel around the area. It includes streets, highways, and freeways for automobiles, sidewalks, trails, alleys, and any other form of travel for pedestrians, then also railroads, canals, and other ways of travel. This is how you get around. Without the paths, a city would simply be a block of buildings, and it would be impossible to move from one place to another. In modern cities, roads have become a very important form of a path. Freeways have shaped the modern American metropolis, and main streets have become a vital part of any urban area. Let's take any random road in the US as an example. So for this video, I'll use Colfax Avenue in Denver, Colorado. This is a 49.5 mile main street route that runs through the city east to west. People from the suburb of Aurora rely on this road to get into the central business district, and anyone within a few blocks of the road will use it every day as a vital connector to their work, stores, and other points of destination. Just to add on to this, Aurora is the most diverse city in Colorado, and there are several different ethnic groups along the route of Colfax Avenue. It connects different areas, people, and ethnicities. It's a very diverse path through the metropolitan area. This is why paths are so important to cities. There are so many people that live within urban areas, and paths are the best way to get around. The next element would be the edges of a city. These would be the boundaries that form a city or a part of a city. This could be any wall or fence, any large building that forms a boundary with its size, a rail line that disconnects neighborhoods, and it could be a major river, lake, or ocean. One more example would be an urban freeway, which either towers above the surrounding environments or is lowered into the ground below it. When people talk about neighborhoods being disconnected by a freeway, this is what they would mean. They form walls and aren't very easy to get across. Now, edges can be either real or perceived. The boundary of a neighborhood, city, or state can also serve as an edge, whether it be as distinct as a physical edge or not. Finally, there are hard edges and soft edges, which make very big differences for how much they affect the built environment around them. A large river with a sharp cutoff would be a good example of a hard edge, while a nice beach and a dock would turn it into a soft edge. This works for perceived edges as well. The edge of Kansas City with its neighboring suburb of Raytown would be soft, with the built environment barely changing. But the edge of Kenner, Louisiana with the swampy land to the west would be a hard edge that coincides with the city limits. Moving on, we have districts, an element that works very closely with edges with how they create a city. They're described as visually distinct areas, and I would also include government-designated areas. It obviously includes cities, states, and even countries, with the areas being very different depending on the infrastructure or government choices. But moving into a very specific city environment, neighborhoods would be the best way to define it. New Orleans has the French Quarter, a very easily definable district. Whereas if you go to Rampart Street, the two sides could be very different as it goes from historic French architecture to a less identifiably historic area. Notice that Rampart City also serves as an edge, though it wouldn't be considered a hard edge. Moving to the fourth element that creates a city, according to Kevin Lynch, we have nodes. A node would be a focal point of a city, neighborhood, or district. This would be defined as somewhere that people meet that has a high volume of foot traffic. Plazas, parks, small popular commercial districts, malls, and anything in between could be defined as a node. Now, when Lynch wrote this book in 1960, his idea of a node was likely very different from what it is today. He was likely focusing more on the plazas and public spaces. But if we look at it in a more modern way, I think there could be a different definition, and that would be intersections. Sure, Lynch is probably thinking about foot traffic, but people drive cars now, so I absolutely think you could include areas with a high volume of traffic. A massive interchange could quickly be considered a node if you bend the definition slightly to include automobile traffic. This could also go as far as train stations or airports. It just depends how you see it. The final element to talk about would be landmarks, a more self-explanatory one. Now, you might ask what the difference between landmarks and nodes are. Well, Lynch defines a landmark as a point of reference that a person can't enter. Obviously, you can consider the main ones, stuff like the Statue of Liberty or the Eiffel Tower. These objects serve as a point of reference around the city, which can be used to be aware of where you are. They can be tall, distinct, and important. And nodes can coincide with landmarks. Using Liberty Island and the Statue of Liberty as an example, the island has 15 to 20,000 visitors per day, being a clear node for the city. But it's centered around the landmark, which would be the statue. A lot of the time they go hand in hand. This definition can be bent as well. The sun could be considered a landmark, since you use it as a place of reference to somewhat see where you are in relation to it. It can have several definitions. And that would be the 5 elements of a city and urban design. These 5 come together to create the urban landscape that we know today. I think it's important to note that this is just one way to look at a city, and other urban designers have given different definitions of what makes it what it is. Potentially, you could make your own definition, and it could be just as valid as any others. It just depends on the way you look at urban planning. Thanks for watching. Thank you to the members this week: Brock Sanders, Stephen Priestman, SB Wilder, Florida Jake, Sergey C17, Alex Williams, Mikita Martinoff, Kurt Ainsley, Jerome McCall, KMS162, JL Bryson, Rosebud Ford, Darkbird, Big Pasty, Wolflake73, Snyder Schwein, Florida Jakes, Ryan Devins, and Hazev the Wolf. I appreciate you all so much. So many of you have been here for so long, and I appreciate it a ton. If you want to become a member, the link is down in the description below. I'm just in college now, so obviously I can use any amount of financial support. If you appreciate the videos and you want to help me out as a person, this is the best way to do it. Thank you.